Welcome back to the podcast, Heal Without Harm. My name is Dr. Clayton Dir, physical therapist, and the one bringing you the truth about the medical system. Today's podcast is about how I lowered my hospital bill, well, my daughter's 2 hospital bills in specific, by about 43% with a phone call that lasted less than 20 minutes. There was a couple other steps I took ahead of time to get to this point, but I want to let you know that you can do the same thing, or at least a version of it. What I'm about to tell you is not a direct bout of advice, but just telling you my story so you have an idea of how to make these phone calls when bills start coming in, especially when you have various different bills coming in, and you have a little bit of information on your side to where you can make the cost probably a bit more affordable. This podcast should be between 8 and 10 minutes. I don't think it should take too terribly long, but hopefully it can be of benefit to you. And if while you're listening, you know somebody else that has a bill sitting on their counter that they are having trouble paying or are intimidated by or don't know what next step to take, you can just send them this podcast and give them an idea of how to navigate that conversation. A couple years ago, my daughter had asthma-related issues that made it to where we needed to take her to the hospital ultimately. After that, a couple months later, we had to go back again. And of course, sometimes those bills from the hospital visits come within a matter of weeks or months, and sometimes it's much later. Fast forward a couple, probably 2 to 4 months later, we get 2 different bills in the mail. They came in, one of them being around $21,000, and the other one was about $15,000 to $18,000. And then after insurance had paid what they were going to pay, the 2 bills came to between $4,000 and $4,500. So let's just say it was $4,000 is what we were on the hook for after insurance. Immediately, I have learned from previous hospital bills and also just talking to other medical professionals that you should call and ask for an itemized receipt or an itemized bill so that you know exactly what you are paying for and what all they charged you for. Because I've heard numerous different stories of people being charged 2 or 3 times for something, being overbilled for something, being billed for something that they never received, whether it was an item or a service. And so this is a quick checkpoint to make sure after the hospital has essentially audited themselves, it gives you and them an opportunity to take one more look at it and make sure everything was billed correctly. In my case, everything was billed just fine. I got the itemized receipt. So back up a little bit. I got the bill in the mail, found the numbers, called and said, hey, could I please get an itemized receipt for this bill? And then that takes, of course, another 2 to 3 weeks. So if you're somebody that's like, probably my wife, who doesn't like a bill just sitting out there, this part is already intimidating because you had to make the phone call and you have to let that bill sit there and not be paid for a while. And I understand that's nerve-wracking. However, they're not going to charge you for being late because you put this next kind of step into place of waiting for that itemized receipt. So you receive the itemized receipt and let's entertain everything is fine on it. At this point in time, hopefully you've also received an explanation of benefits from your insurance company. Essentially, the insurance company verifying, here is what was billed to us, here's what we are paying, here is your responsibility, here's your financial responsibility. Again, if all that lines up, then you know you're good to move forward, that all your ducks are in a row, and yes, you do owe this money. For us, again, that price was about $4,000. So then I went to the hospital or the bill, right? So in our case, it was Wesley Medical Centers, the hospital that we went to, but I believe they are owned by a bigger company called HCA. So I called their billing department, the number that was on the paper bill. I called and I have questions on my bill, or I want to pay my bill, whatever that was is where I went on their little automated system. And when this lovely lady came on the phone, she was actually very nice. First of all, always speak very nicely. If you've not read the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, that is the one I would recommend for you to read, as it's very applicable in everything in life, but especially navigating these types of challenging conversations. So I was very polite and talked to her and said, hey, I've got 2 bills here. I would like to pay them in full today, but I want to see if when I go to pay this in full, if there's any sort of discount or settlement that we can come to. That's the other part I've learned. You need to use the word settlement. They need this bill paid for. A lot of people won't pay their bill at all, or they have to spend a lot of time and a lot of money to get this bill at least somewhat paid for. So the term that they will likely use is settlement. We want to settle this bill. So when you call, say, hi, my name is John Smith or whatever your name is. I have this bill here that I need to pay. I would like to pay it in full. I would like to come to some sort of settlement so that we can get this taken care of. So after I had asked that, she's like, yeah, we can get that taken care of since you're paying in full. How is, this much money? I think one of the bills was like $1,880. And she said, how is the price of $1,805? And I like paused for a sec. And this is where I want you to feel comfortable pausing. You don't need to just answer right away. You don't need to just hurry off the phone. You're just having a conversation with another human. And I typed into my calculator and did the math. And this was like a 3.5% discount, like a 3.5% drop in cost. And I was like, oh, so you're offering a discount of like 3%. This is another tactic I've learned from a book called Never Split the Difference. It's an FBI negotiator. Is mirror back. Ultimately, just say right back to them, okay, so you're offering a discount of $72, which is about 3% discount. Is that correct? And it gives them time to pause, like, yes, that is exactly what I'm saying. Okay, cool. I was looking to get this knocked down by about 50%, which I know at this moment, you're probably like, wow, you're literally asking them to cut it in half. And it's like, yes, I am. And it was at this moment she said, okay, can you please hold for one moment? I was like, absolutely. I've got nothing else to do. I will definitely hold for one moment. So after about 3 or 4 minutes of me being on hold, she comes back. And again, this was like $1,800, almost $1,900 bill. And I could be off a little bit on the numbers, so I apologize. But when she had came back, she said, okay, after talking to whoever it was, we can offer you a settlement of $880, somewhere in the 800s. So I quickly did the math. And this was a 45% discount she had given me because I am telling her I will pay it in full. I will clear it off. You can get it off your books, blah, blah, blah. She had offered me a 45% discount. And I said, that'll absolutely work. I have my credit card here ready for you. Tell me when you'd like me to read it off. So we got that one paid for, saved about 45%. I said also on the second bill, which I think this one was like $2,100 or something like that. When we got to the second bill, I said, okay, the other bill is this. Here's the number, yada, yada, yada. I would like to have a settlement that is similar to the one we just did. And it's speaking with confidence, but not being mean in any capacity. And just saying, here's my expectations. Here's what I'm shooting for. Here's what would help me. Where can we meet in the middle? She's puts me on hold for about 4 or 5 minutes again, which again feels like eternity, I know. And she comes back and she gives me the number. And when I had done the math afterwards, I had this all written out. I've done a TikTok over it, and it actually did very well because I think it helped a lot of people. When I did the math between the two bills, after the discounts came through, I think I averaged about a 43% discount by making this phone call. When I got off the phone call lasted less than 20 minutes, and I had saved myself over $1,800, which is a very valuable use of my time. So I highly recommend that whenever you have a bill from a hospital or from, honestly, any medical provider at all, because I've done this with other medical bills that have came in, if you have a bill come in the mail, you can always attempt to negotiate. I had one come in for a surgical procedure I had done, and I called and I said, hey, it looks like my insurance isn't really covering anything, or they're at least not paying for any of this. I think they technically covered it, but everything was going towards deductible. Is there any sort of like discount that I can get for paying in full? Or is there a cash pay discount where I don't use my insurance at all? What all is there available? Because these people who are essentially collecting the payment, they want their stuff paid for. They want it done. They don't want outstanding bills. And they're also people. And they know this a lot better than you, most likely. And so when you call and you're just trying to be invested in the outcomes and getting things paid for, they're usually willing to help you, which is really nice. Be like, hey, I don't really know what I'm looking for here, or I don't know much about this bill. Can you help explain this to me? I want to make sure you get paid, but I also want to make sure I'm paying the appropriate amount. And they're usually very nice people, at least in my experience. And especially if you show up with kindness and you're polite in your words, then they want to help you. And so you can use this with pretty much any medical bill in particular. And the worst they can say is, no, I'm sorry, there's no discounts we can offer. We just need this paid. And most of the time, they'll at least break it down into some sort of a payment plan at 0% interest. That's another huge one, is a lot of the times they will break it down into payment plans to where you are not paying interest. If you pay these in full on your credit card at a 20 to 30% interest rate, that's another way that unfortunately you can get buried in medical bills when you don't have to. The final thing I will say on this, and if you have any questions, please, I'll do my best to put an email down in the podcast description. You can email me directly. This is not my area of expertise. I'm just telling you my experience, but I can at least potentially put you in touch with the right person who can help you answer these questions. But the other thing too is I remember one time my wife had a medical procedure done. We were under the impression that this was going to be paid for, but unfortunately it all went towards deductible. We did not know that until 3 months later, procedure's done, bills come through, and we're on the hook for like $2,100. And at the time, we did not have $2,100 to pay for this. So what we did is we read through the bill the best we could, and we actually called and we said, hey, we are not really able to pay this. Is there anything you can do to help us, or what can we do in this case? And they said, well, we actually have financial assistance available. If you just fill out this form, we could potentially get, some financial assistance. After we went through that process, we got approved. That $2,100 bill dropped to $240. We saved 90% because the company in which did the services and stuff have funds and financial assistance set aside for cases like ours. And we were able to get that $2,000 bill knocked down to about $200. Much more feasible. They got it paid for. The bill was now off of their ledger. We were good to go, scot-free. So I will say, when you have bills come in the mail, make sure everything is correct. Double check it with your insurance company. And yes, even after insurance has paid and settled down to what you owe, you can still negotiate from there. I hope this podcast is helpful for you. If it is not particularly helpful for you, but you can tell that it is helpful, and you know somebody who could benefit from listening, and so they know how to better navigate paying their medical bill, please send this on to them. Other than that, I hope you learned a little bit more how to heal without harm. And if you have questions, please contact me. Thank you.